right, so Kevin Stitt, thank you for coming down to KSWO while you're in town in Lawton. How's the trip been so far?
It's been great. You know, the first thing we did, we stopped by Lawton MacArthur High School and toured their junior ROTC program. And it's just amazing. About 85 kids, and the discipline, the hard work, their creed is talking about, you know, God and country and honesty, integrity, and hard work and discipline. And I just loved it. And these young people are, you know, some of them are going active duty, some of them are going to college, but what they're learning is just amazing. And then the reason I came down to visit them is that they've won the last 4 years the junior ROTC in the state of Oklahoma. So I wish every high school had what they had here. And then this is a program all over the country that Oklahoma's leading in. And one young man I met just got an appointment to the Air Force Academy. So that's where he'll be going next year. So just future leaders of Oklahoma, and so their parents were so proud of them. And it's cool. They had the governor come down, and I was able to congratulate and take pictures with all the young people, and just so proud of them. And as a father myself, I just see the potential in all those people, and it was really cool. And then later on today, we're going to go. We've got a speaking to the chamber group and just kind of talking about what's happened in the state capitol this year, and love coming to Lawton. It's an awesome part of our state.
So speaking about what's happening this session, what are your feelings about the legislature's work so far? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm really trying to get a 0.5 point tax cut done for Oklahomans, because inflation and the government doesn't need more money, and that's what I say. Oklahomans elected a businessman governor. I've been there for 7 years now. We have the largest savings account we've ever had. So I'm asking for flat budgets, meaning let's fund the government. I'm not saying we're going to cut anything, but we can certainly do a 0.5 point tax cut and then a path to zero. So path to zero means as we have more revenue, we automatically generate a tax cut back to Oklahomans, and we modestly grow government at like 3% a year. But here's the deal. Government never tells you, oh, you've sent us too much money. There's always a great plan for them to spend money on. But man, it's the people's money. And the more we can get our economy booming, I think the better off we are leaving it in people's pockets. So, that's something I need to get across the finish line this year for the benefit of all Oklahomans.
It seems like ever since I've been covering you, tax cuts has been pretty much on the top of the priority list. People like Senator Jesse Devers over in Elgin, just a short hop, skip, and a jump away, kind of feel like I've seen them say the comment of they believe taxation is sort of theft by the government. Are you kind of the same opinion? I kind of like to get behind the philosophy behind the policy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't call it theft by the government, but I would, because there's certain things we have to do. We have to build roads and bridges, and there's schools and those things. But I look at it just from a business standpoint. We compete against Texas, and Texas is at zero income tax. And so if you tax something, you get less of it. So if you tax work, you get less of it. So we want to encourage more investments in the state of Oklahoma. Arkansas, so just from a business standpoint, Arkansas just went to a 3.9% tax rate. So they're lower than us now. We're at 4.75. Louisiana just went to 3%. How are these other states doing it? Colorado just went to 4.25. So the question we have to ask ourselves as citizens is, how big should state government be, right? Of course we need certain things, right? Roads and bridges and healthcare and infrastructure. And I think those things are important, but they always ask for more. So you have to slow the growth of government. And that's my businessman approach. And that's why we've had the largest savings account we've ever had in state history right now. When I took over, just to remind Oklahomans, we had no money in savings. And then we were having teacher walkouts, if you remember that, in 2018, billion-dollar budget deficits. And Oklahomans elected a businessman governor. I'd never been in politics because I'm not a politician, just to put a business approach on running state government, and it's been working. But I'm telling you, right now, we need to do a 0.5 point tax cut to keep this momentum going with our competition with other states.
You mentioned how you're this is your first time in politics. Did anything surprise you when you I know you're nearing that end of the terms. You know, you're about to be term limited out. Has anything surprised you when you got into government that you didn't think was going to be the case or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, tons of stuff. But I would say the biggest thing that I try to explain to Oklahomans, and I just appreciate people listening to this and coming to the chamber events and being involved in your community, because the more we're informed as citizens in Lawton and in Enid and in Altus And in Oklahoma City, the better off we are holding our elected officials accountable. So I just encourage everybody to understand what's happening in Oklahoma City and also in Washington, D.C. But I think the biggest thing that would frustrate most Oklahomans if they saw behind the curtain like I do, the lobbyists and the industries that go pay somebody to run a bill that just benefits them and doesn't benefit the citizens and the taxpayers. And so I always explain it this way. The money is on the yes side. The money is always on the side that says don't cut taxes because we want to spend money on X, Y, or Z. And so then they can hire lobbyists because they're going to benefit. So I work for the taxpayers. I work for the citizens of Oklahoma. So I'm the guy that's going, no, we don't need to spend that money. And so that's the conflict. And so you have to really hold your elected leaders official, your senators, your House members, and you have to call them and just say, where are you at on Governor Stitt's tax cut? And hold them accountable. Because trust me, if I could write the laws and sign them, they would already be done. But I have to work through the House, the Senate. I've called them in for 3 special sessions. I'm not putting Oklahoma in a bad situation at all. I'm not saying cut services, but I'm saying if you keep spending at these levels, you're going to be in a bad situation in a year or two because revenue doesn't just always go up in a straight line.
You mentioned regarding those tax cuts, how that's going to make Oklahoma more competitive to get businesses. Another type of policies that you're trying to get is called behind the meter policies. Can you explain that a little bit for maybe those that don't know what that means?
Yeah, and so this is kind of in the weeds, but behind the meter, all it means is really allowing more electricity generation in our state. If we already have one of the most affordable, reliable grids or electricity cost. And so in other words, for everybody listening out there, you pay a third or maybe even a quarter what they pay in California for electricity to heat your home or business. So that's a huge advantage that we have. But we want to keep that going because with data centers, with big factories using a lot of electricity, we want them to be able to maybe build behind the meter, like for example, just to be able to build their own generation, electricity generation that serves their factory. Because these are big 1 gigawatt factories that maybe OG&E, PSO, they don't have time to get something online. It'll take them 7 years, and we don't want to slow business down, okay? So I want OG&E and PSO to build more electricity generation, and they're working on it. But if you're going to have a new data center come in or a new factory in Lawton, do the citizens of Lawton, do they care if OG&E builds it or do they care if the company builds it? Nobody, we don't care, right? As citizens, I just want high-paying jobs in my community, and I want the opportunity for my kids to stay here and have great jobs. And so that's why I think it's not really sexy, but it's really, really important to stay ahead of the curve. If the more electricity we have generated in Oklahoma, I think the more we'll be the place that businesses want to come.
I think something that when people hear businesses coming to Oklahoma, they just think of how is that going to benefit the big business. They don't think of maybe the ramifications outside of what all that brings to Oklahoma. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
What big business, other than just the business itself, what does that bring to the Sooner State?
Yeah, I mean like Goodyear plants or Michelin, or we're recruiting a big ammo manufacturer here from overseas that's going to build in Oklahoma. So and when you have these employers that employ 300 people, not only does it help those 300 people that are going to be employed there to have high-paying jobs that are going to be able to take care of their families, but the economy, the way the dollar moves in the economy, it helps the bicycle shops, it helps your restaurants, it helps everybody in the community wins when you have business and the economy going. And then from an education standpoint, it helps education and infrastructure, and it helps healthcare. How do you think we get the money to pay for healthcare or all the infrastructure, roads and bridges? That all comes from businesses being here and the fact that we're a business-friendly state. So as a Republican governor, this is something people don't realize. I've put more money in public education in my first 6 years than they did for like 30 years before I got here. Because I'm the businessman governor and we got our economy booming, we've been able to double down and give pay raises, huge pay raises to teachers. And because you have to pay market, and we need to promote that profession, right? The magic happens when we have our best teachers teaching our young people in the classroom. Just like I saw at Lawton Mac today, it was just amazing, the teachers that are pouring into those young people. And we want to promote that profession. It's so important. But that all comes because our economy's booming, right? If we go back to where we're in a recession, there won't be teacher pay raises. There won't be this or that, right? So that's where you got to understand how the business works and what the business people need and what they're looking for. They just want a level playing field. They want quick permitting reform to be able to kind of get shovel-ready sites. So those are all the things we're working on behind the scenes. And I work a lot with your economic development people down here in Lawton, your FISTA. We've spent a lot of money on the FISTA, getting that set up. I think it's a huge advantage for Oklahoma. The fact that you have Lawton, Fort Sill, and we're recruiting companies to come do some R&D development there at Lawton, Fort Sill. It's amazing.
Something that is also booming, not only in Oklahoma, well, not Oklahoma just yet, but in the nation, is sports betting. I mean, you can't turn on ESPN without seeing, the betting lines, what have you. What would benefit Oklahoma to have sports betting legal right here? Yeah.
Well, first off, I'm not a big fan of gambling at all. I think it's a tax on people that really can't afford it, and they're spending disposable income, casinos. There's the other side of gambling that's not good, right? And people don't really talk about that. So most other states, they have, when they get revenue for casinos or gambling, they set up funds to help with the addiction side. We don't really do that in Oklahoma because we don't hardly get anything on the revenue side. But the sports book, listen, I've proposed it because if the legislature is going to pass it, I've put together what would be a free market principle where the state would benefit the most. And so my proposal has a $500,000 open license. Anybody can sign up. It's a free market. The tribes can apply for this statewide mobile license. You, me, it doesn't matter. It's just anybody that wants to spend $500,000, which, by the way, is what other states charge. Okay, so there's about 40 states that offer this sports book. So $500,000, then it's $100,000 renewal, and anybody can do it. So the tribes can do it. And then we were going to set aside a license in the tribal casinos. They could have a sports book there. The state would charge them 15%, and then we would get paid 20% on the statewide mobile. Okay, so that it would be a good, transparent, accountable deal. The state would do really well on it. Unfortunately, the tribes hired lobbyists, and they came in and they're trying to push the legislature for one that basically exclusively gives it to them, which is not good. And it only and here's the thing that people don't realize. Oklahomans are smart about this. In the bill that's going across right now, they pay 10% to the state after expenses. So think about that for a second. If you're any business person listening to me, you don't own a royalty like McDonald's franchisees or Chick-fil-A or whoever the franchisees, Arby's. The franchisee doesn't get to pay all your expenses and then pay the royalty fee. It'd be great if the government, let me ask you this. Does the government take their taxes on your gross income, or do they wait till all your expenses are done, right? So I'm like, well, that's not fair. I have to pay my mortgage. My car payment. Me and my wife have to go to the grocery store, and then I'll pay them 4% taxes. No. That's not the way it works. They make you pay 4.75% on your gross. It doesn't matter what your expenses are. And so the fact that this bill is going to say, oh, we'll pay the state 10% after all of our expenses, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And if it passes, I'm going to, of course, veto it. But that's another bill that's just ridiculous that gets to my desk. But what Oklahomans need to understand is the House and Senate members that are running that, it wasn't their idea. The people that are going to benefit, back to the point where I say the money's on the yes side, the people that are going to benefit from that bill, the people that are going to make the millions and millions and millions of dollars, they're the ones that go in and tell the legislature, hey, run this for us. That's the corruption that I hate. And Oklahomans, that's why we hate politicians, because we can see they're doing stuff that's good for them and these certain industries and not good for Oklahomans. So you've got a governor that has to fight this stuff, and I'll veto all the stuff that's not good for the taxpayers of Oklahoma.
You mentioned waste, and one of the things you did to combat waste this session is to create DOGE-OK. Now, one of the first findings it did, they found underutilized federal health grants. And they said that should be given back to the federal government. Of course, some people have said that, hey, this should stay in the state and what have you to benefit Oklahomans. But could that money stay in Oklahoma? Is it better to give it back to the federal government? What is your view on that?
So the $157 million that they found, those were grants that we weren't using. So it wasn't a deal that I could move those monies over here and use it on homeless or use it on anywhere else. It was specific for a purpose that we couldn't use. So of course we want to give that back. The federal government spends $2 trillion over their income. So I applaud President Trump and Elon for trying to figure out we've got to spend within our means, and that means you have to spend your income, right? What lifestyle can we spend more than our income, right? So the government's no different. And if Oklahomans realize this, we're on the dollar standard, the world is. And so we're able to print dollars and deficit spend. But there'll come a point, if this continues, that the world will remove itself from the dollar standard. Other countries, this is my point that I want to explain, other countries can't deficit spend because they can't just print the yen or anything else and then just go spend it. But since we're so fortunate that the world uses the dollar, that we've kind of started to abuse that a little bit, and we have a $36 trillion debt, and we spend interest only on that debt. It's not principal and interest like when you have your mortgage where you're paying it off. It's interest only. That means we're never paying it off, and we now spend more than we spend on the national defense. You're spending on interest only, and that is a problem, right? And so that's why President Trump, rightfully so, is looking at all these expenses saying, hey, should we be really, messing with election turnout in India the crazy stuff that they're finding that we're spending on all these humanitarian efforts around the world is silly. And I think most Oklahomans agree with them and are like, hey, yeah, stop spending that money. But of course, we're going to send back money if we're not using it or it's for a specific purpose that Oklahoma can't spend it on.
There's a couple of bills this session and about Bitcoin. Do you know much about Bitcoin? Are you interested in it at all, or?
I've got some friends that are really into it, telling me about it. I don't know enough about it really to talk about it, except that, again, that's back to the dollar. The people are worried about the devaluing of the dollar, so they're looking to more of a stable coin that you can't really play with, and through monetary policy, it doesn't really change. And so I think that's why people are gravitating towards something like that, because they think it's more secure outside of the politics or outside of the spending of the federal government.
So I got two more questions for you. One is about education, then one is kind of a look ahead type of question. So for the education one, obviously the social studies standards are big in the news now. Some people, Ryan Walters wants to see them put into place, obviously, and some in the legislature wants some action to be done so they can redo them. Where do you stand on that? Do you want to go back to the board to look at it again? What are your feelings on it?
Yeah, so the board, they came to my team and just said, hey, the problem that we have with these is the mechanics that they were done. So they said that the documents that were given to them to vote on were different than the ones that were emailed to them. So in any board situation, that's like a bait and switch. If that's true, that needs to be addressed. But as far as some of the standards, I haven't read through all the standards, but that's up to the school board and the elected officials to see if we need to change some of those standards. So I don't want to speak on that, but the mechanism, we need to make sure we know what we're voting on. And now it's in the legislature's court on whether they're going to approve those or not.
All right, so last one, like I mentioned, 2026 is fast approaching. Your term limited out, but of course you still care about Oklahoma regardless of whether or not you're in that seat. So what qualities do you hope to see in the next governor of Oklahoma?
And that's going to heat up over the next few months. And I tell people we don't even know who all is in the race yet. At this time in 2000, it'd been equivalent of 2017, nobody heard of Kevin Stitt, right? Everybody thought that a guy named Todd Lamb, who was the lieutenant governor, and Mick Cornett, who was the mayor of Oklahoma City, they were the shoo-ins. Everybody was positive they were going to win governor. But Oklahomans are smart, right? Oklahomans want a non-politician. They want someone who has integrity. They want someone who has a business-minded approach. And so I'm really, really excited about who all comes into that race, and Oklahomans will figure that out. But I think that's why, back to politicians, it's so frustrating when you see elected officials running for their next election while they're in office, right? I took off from my job and my company when I ran for governor and was able to, it's supposed to be public service, right? Our founding fathers wanted you to be a successful teacher or rancher or business person, and you would leave that to go serve your country or your state, and then you come back to the private sector. And so that's what I did. That's what I promised Oklahomans I would do. And to see these politicians, that's why I ran, is because all I saw was the same guys running for their next step, and I thought nothing's going to change. And I don't want us to go back there to where we were before I took office. And a lot of people say this. They say, Governor, you know, the next governor is going to spend your $5 billion in savings like that. And I sure hope not. But my job is just to put Oklahoma in the very best position. And then, yeah, I'm going to be cheering on the next guy, and I'll be going to the chamber events, and I'll be getting involved and going back to running my company and raising my family in Oklahoma. I'm a fourth-generation Oklahoman, and it'll be somebody else's turn to lead our state. But Oklahomans will get it right. They'll weed through the 30-second commercials, and they'll actually meet these people, and they'll see, they'll look at their voting record, and they'll see who they are. And I'm confident that Oklahomans will pick the best person.
All right, Governor, it's been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.